You're busy, you've got a decent practice, but nobody wants to be decent. You want to be great, and you want to have a great practice. So how did the most productive, profitable dentist in the nation balance real life, work, and profits, and somehow make it all seem fun? Well, it comes down to simple, everyday practices. So grab a lunch, join us as we chat with top clinicians and influencers to discover their formula for uncommon success. Are you ready? Then it's time to explore everyday practices.
Hey everybody, it's Chad Johnson here with Regan Robertson. Regan, how you doing today?
I'm feeling refreshed, Chad. Thank you for asking.
We are back and at the Everyday Practices podcast, and we've got Dr. Dar Radfar on today. Dr. Dar, how you doing, man?
Hi, Chad. How are you? Thanks, bud.
I'm doing all right. So why don't you fill us in kind of just a little bit on your history of, dentistry and whatnot. You're Thousand Oaks. So for people that don't know California that well, it's basically kind of like northwest LA area. I mean, just to overly simplify it, for people to kind of in their mind put where you are, you're kind of LA area, Malibu-ish. So are you originally from around there? Where did you do dental school? Fill us in.
Yeah, I actually grew up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, went to USC School of Dentistry.
Yeah.
And then stayed in Southern California because of the weather. Thousand Oaks is about 30 miles or so outside of LA. I have actually a couple practices, one in Thousand Oaks and one in Oxnard, which is a little further away from Thousand Oaks. I've been a dentist for about 18 years now. My practice is about 30% sleep apnea, and I do a lot of medical billing for sleep appliances. I refer for home sleep testing to the sleep company that I use. They do also my medical billing. They're called Medical Concierge Services, mcsdental.com. I use them. I'm not an owner of them. I just use them and promote them because they do such a great job for medical billing for dentists and home sleep testing.
I'm already so taking notes.
Yeah. And then, so I teach a lot on that topic, actually. 30% of my practice, again, is that. So I've been teaching it ever since I got diagnosed with sleep apnea 10 years ago. At a tender young age of 33 years old, I was starting to snore. Then I was given a CPAP machine. I laughed at it and gave it back. And then 3 months later, I fell asleep at the wheel and crashed my car into a tree. So being a patient and a survivor of, let's call it a car accident, falling asleep at the wheel, made me a little bit more passionate. When you become a patient of helping someone with snoring and apnea, whether it's yourself or a staff member or a spouse or family, and you see the efficacy of the mouthpiece, you really become an advocate for it, and then you incorporate it into your office. So that's one of the main things that I've been teaching.
Regan, who does that sound like? I mean, man, Dr. Bruce, had his fall asleep at the wheel kind of thing. And I was actually going to ask you what your story was, but I'm just glad you went straight to the Cliff's Notes, to tell us about that. But holy moly. So just so that way, so you've got some webinars that you've been producing while we're on COVID strike. Let's pretend it's our choice. But so tell us about that. You're addressing medical billing, you're addressing sleep apnea. How do people find this so that way they can, learn more about the webinars that you're producing?
Yeah, over the last 7 years, I had the pleasure of doing live seminars all over the country for doctors and staff with respect to sleep apnea and medical billing. Now it seems like the Zoom thing actually has been pretty cool because I've had a couple hundred people as opposed to 50 or 60 people, now coming to the course. And I've recorded it. So the 5-hour sleep apnea and medical billing webinar, your listeners can have access to it. They just have to email me to darradfar@gmail.com. My first name, D-A-R, then R-A-D-F-A-R @gmail.com. Email me for the request for, I've done 2 types of webinars since we've been on COVID strike, as you call it. I like that.
I just came up with that on the top of my head.
It's fantastic. I'm no longer in strike, by the way. California dentists are allowed to open as of about a week and a half ago. So I actually had the county voluntarily, I went on the county website in Ventura County, California, where my offices are at, and asked for an attestation of the office. And I had a public health person come to my office and check my office out, make sure I have the social distancing signs, the masks, hand sanitizers, all this, everything that's set up the correct way.
Basically to get certified.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's, they gave me literally a certification, and that's up on my door as you enter the office now, let alone an email blast to my patients that the city and county public health has officially granted us to open for preventative and restorative procedures. And so that leads me to the other webinars that I've been doing, is how to set up your office. You know, post-COVID / during COVID, let's call it, with respect to something as easy as getting a sneeze guard to protect your front office and your treatment coordinator from patients, which looks like a little plexiglass like you see at the banks or whatnot, or the grocery stores, to hand sanitizers all over the office, what signs to post for your social distancing signs in the front, with respect to having the patients wear a mask as they walk into your office, keep the mask on into the treatment room, and then we'll ask the patient to take it off in the treatment room, and then they have to put it back on after we're done with them before they leave the treatment room and enter the hallway, just in case they run into a patient in the front or in the hallway. We're doing all that we can to follow guidelines.
Dar,
cool.
in your opinion, do you see this as being a new, like I hate to say the new normal, it's so cliche, but will this be the standard moving forward for forever?
Yeah, you know, definitely the kind of barriers that we're using, the KN95 FDA approved mask or the N95, it's hard to breathe. I mean, I've seen people posting on my Instagram, you know, they're like, it's so hot, you know, with the extra gown on, and you've got the face shield or goggles on. It's tougher to breathe. So like, I used to see 30 patients a day. I mean, literally myself. Yeah. Now it's like 18. I did what I call, I highly recommend you do a soft opening. You know, just like how restaurants do soft opening with a few things on the menu. Just to see how the pace is with respect to your front, your social distancing. Your staff isn't going to be as stressed. You know, they're wearing a mask too. They're checking temperatures at the door when people walk in with their masks on.
You haven't held a drill in your hand for 8 or 9 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a weird feeling? Like,
I'll admit, yes.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like I had one patient, we just opened on Monday. So today's Wednesday. So this is my 3rd day back, and we kind of did a soft, slow start, and it's driving me nuts because I'm bored. And I want to be faster, but I'm just like, this is probably for the best that we just get everyone back. But then I started prepping a crown on 15, and I was thinking to myself, to the patient, I'm just like, can you get your tongue out of the way? Like, what in the world? Is this me? Like, am I just normally used to this, or is this an actually difficult patient that I would have still complained about? But all this going on in my mind, I'm just like, oh my goodness. I think my tolerance has subsided from like some of the stuff that you just roll with. And right now I'm just like, what the heck? Get your tongue. I'm prepping the buckle and your tongue is touching it. Cut it out. Like, I'm just being honest here. This is not like patient-centric forum.
What a grumpy Gus.
It was, in my own mind, it was very grumpy, but like I was just realizing that normally I'm used to kind of just rolling with it, because you build up tolerance to that. And I just wasn't. I was like, what the heck? Dar, have you had that experience? Like, please tell me you've had that experience.
It's hilarious that you mentioned that. In my sleep apnea webinar or seminars that I used to do, now the webinars, I use that example exactly. When you have the patient back and you're working on 14 or 15 or 2 and 3 on the molars, and the tongue's in the way, they probably have that tongue falling back and snoring like crazy and have obstructive sleep apnea. I call it a 20-second timeout in basketball, right? I call a little timeout and I go, hey, by the way, when I had you back, I noticed your tongue falling back and kind of getting into the airway. How do you sleep at night? Does anyone tell you that you snore? Do you feel tired when you wake up? I'm a little concerned you're not maybe getting enough oxygen in, and I kind of incorporate that intro to like a little sleep consult, so to speak, by just going through what you went through. Why the hell is the tongue in the way when I'm prepping 14 or 15?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think coming back, that soft opening is brilliant, Chad. It's necessary for the first week. There's no rush, just to see how everything's going. Also, what we're doing is we're getting medical insurance cards from every patient that walks in through the door, because you're doing a COVID screening by asking those several questions of Have you had a cough? Have you traveled? Have you had fever, diarrhea, fatigue in the last 2 weeks? And you're checking temperature. And ultimately, if you do a COVID screening antibody test, you don't. The other thing that I talk about in my webinar for reopening is those antibody finger prick tests that give you results for a couple antibodies within 10 minutes, the accuracy, all that.
Do you have a testing machine?
It's a finger prick testing test that you don't need a machine. It's basically a cassette, kind of like a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
And within 10 minutes, you'll see if the patient has been exposed, so it has IgG or IgM antibodies. And I'll go over that in a minute. But that's all, by the way, billable as a medical office visit for the patient, even though they're coming in for a dental procedure or exam. So that's why.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
So is that for every patient that you see, or do you go through risk like diagnosis and then say, okay?
Well, every patient, we're supposed to screen for every patient on the phone before they come, and also when they come in, they have a consent form that I give them that asks, hey, have you been, having fever, fatigue, cough, any of those symptoms that are associated with COVID, and when we do the temperature check. That is a screening test for COVID. That's a medical condition you're screening for. Just like if you screen for TMJ, that's a medical condition, or if you, TMD, excuse me, or sleep apnea, those are all limited office visit examinations that you can bill to PPO medical. Kaiser or HMO, you can't because you're out of network. You're not a Kaiser provider. But PPO medical, it's a billable office visit to be able to recoup some of our the HEPA filters that we've got with the UVC and the ozone water possibly that you've put in, or the, all the PPEs. The gowns are like $4 or $5 and they used to be like $1 before, or the masks. All these things, we're trying to recoup it. So do we want to charge the patient a flat fee for coming in, or do we want to try to get it from their medical insurance and maybe even profit from it and make it kind of a little bit of a, you're doing the exam, why not try to bill for it?
Talk to us about the ozone water. That sounds really, really interesting. And I know anytime ozone comes up, Chad's eyes start to sparkle.
Ozone.
Yeah. It's the ozone in his eyes. Ozone water in 2003 with SARS-CoV-1 was really big in showing how ozone water can actually kill viruses. It's been used for decades to be able to sterilize foods, different types of hospitals, like after surgery is done and there's the metal crates or carts or beds or whatnot, they're not just wiped down with Lysol wipes. The ozone water has been used because it safely and effectively removes or kills pathogens. And ozone treatment has holistically been shown in dentistry to be able to reduce bacteria that is associated with having an abscess or gum disease and whatnot. So the concept is, can we bottle ozone water from our tap, ozonated, and put it in the chair and be able to use a high-speed or the 3-way water syringe and reduce the amount of pathogens in the patient's mouth. So as we're working on the aerosols like the drill and the 3-way, can we lower the number? And of course, this hasn't been tested or researched in the mouth to say, hey, spit in a test tube. Let's see how much virus and bacteria have. Let me go ahead now and work with ozone water in your mouth, but and then see the difference. We actually know it's been really, really effective in killing SARS-CoV-1. So the research shows that it could be effective in killing SARS-CoV-2.
Especially the encapsulated viruses.
Exactly. What ozone basically does is it attacks the nuclear part of the RNA and just literally dismantles the virus. So it's just another way of being able to attach, basically it's called ozone filtration for your water. The only thing is typically after about 30 minutes, the ozonation leaves the water bottle. So what we've discovered is, it's good to fill up your water bottle with the ozone water that's coming out of your sink that's been treated with the ozone adaptation that you can attach to your faucet, and then try to use it within 30 minutes. I mean, granted, it may go longer, the procedure, you may want to refill the water. This isn't your only armamentarium to fighting what we're fighting here, but it's definitely an added bonus. And it costs $150, $200 to convert one of your sinks. It's better than distilled water, and doesn't have a foul taste or anything like that. So I've been doing that for my chairs, and anytime we're doing a drilling or aerosol procedure, they go fill up the water, then we get started.
Cool. Very cool.
So did you do that on all of your chairs, Dar, or did you just like kind of one at a time?
I just look at the chairs that we're gonna do. Like basically in the morning we'll do that. But if I'm doing any sort of crown prep or using the drill, for sure, like right before we get started, she could go empty the water out and turn on the faucet and just turn on the water again to just fill it up and attach it to the chair and get started right away. I mean, I have some of the chairs. I have 6 operatories, so some of them don't have any water in it at all. So right before we start working, they're filling it up with ozone water.
I'm curious, Dar, how are you communicating this with your patients? Because you know your team, yourself, you've put in an awful lot of measures, and I've seen so many doctors doing the same. So there's the reality and then the perception of safety and actual safety, and how are you communicating that?
Yeah, of course, through, you know, I use Demand Force and I've done an email blast, but nowadays who really checks their email all the time? I think people do text message more, but when they come in, their informed consent that I've been giving them, that we are in an environment that does produce aerosols, that there is a risk for everybody here, but to minimize the risk, we've added HEPA air filter with UVC. We're doing, you know, ozone water. We're checking temperatures. We're using hand sanitizers for staff and patients throughout the office. So anything that you're providing, Isolite system, whatever you're doing in your office, it's a good, when you're giving the informed consent, you don't want to just give them an informed consent, just a sign that says, yeah, I don't have fever, this, that, the last couple of weeks. And sure, I know my risk factor here. It's also a little paragraph about all the little bullet points of what you're doing differently above and beyond what the county is requesting us to do. It makes, I've noticed my patients, I've been working consistently since last Thursday. I mean, everyone signed the informed consent. They're very appreciative of what we're doing. They see the difference based on 6 months ago or 3 or 4 months ago. Right. So they're acknowledging that they're, you know, coming in and trying to be as safe as possible. Do
you know, I learned something, Dar, about UVC. I learned that the UVC creates ozone.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so part of what disinfects, you know, isn't just the light; it's the fact that it ozonates the area, because the UVC converts the oxygen to O3. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I've had patients or doctors ask me, how about ozone generators? You know, because like basically the gas. The problem with ozone generators, the actual, like, let's call it fogging your office with ozone, is if it's the concentration's too high and you don't do it right, it can be toxic. So yes, I don't recommend messing with ozone generators, which actually produce an ozone gas to fog the office. But Dr. Coyce up in Pacific Northwest in Seattle, he mentioned something with hypochlorous acid, HOCL fogging of the office. That I provide that also, that information in my COVID webinar, which again, if anyone wants that webinar, darradfar@gmail.com, I can send you it. It's an hour long for the COVID one. I show you the solution with vinegar, distilled water, and salt. You can make your own HOCL, where to get the fogger and the blender to mix it. I know it's a lot of work, guys. But it's literally it'll kill everything around a doorknob very safely for the office. Yes. You know, on the monitor, the back of the monitor, the corner of the wall. It's almost, I call it, instead of Ghostbusters, COVID busters, right? We go in and we just kind of fog everything at the end of the day. You could even do it at lunchtime. It takes 10 minutes for things to be cleaned out. So it's not something that you gotta like let fog overnight. Fogging kind of sounds dangerous. Like I remember I bought in my dorm or in my college, if I had, you know, ants or bugs or something, I would do that fogger and run out of that apartment.
Right.
It sounds like it could be, but not with the HOCL type of fogging. It's safe to do. You can mix your own batch every day. The staff can do it and then fog it like they're basically spraying like with a fog machine that you can get.
What you're doing is it's a fancy, well, it might be even just a weatherman's term for aerosolizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you do it in your home?
You could.
Actually, yeah, you could. They do it right in movie theaters and airplanes. Right? Currently, airplanes, when people get
hotels.
Yep, they're doing it in hotels. I mean, hopefully they're doing it in hotels, but I know airplanes, it's become a standard now. When after everyone gets off the plane, they're fogging it, and that's brilliant. I mean,
That's
how are you
very
going to
smart.
wipe down every little nook and cranny, the little handlebar of the tray table in front of you on an airplane? Same thing in a dental office. I mean, there's so many components of the chair and the cabinets, and I mean, we're getting every door. Cabinet knob and the door handle to the operatory, whatever we have, is it going to be cleaned and wiped? Not necessarily. So fogging with HOCL is a very good idea. You can even do it throughout the day, but most doctors are doing it at the end of the day before they leave.
Sure. Well, and I mean, it's what this has done psychologically to us is really interesting. I had a nightmare over the weekend because I took my family to go we were buying plants. And I woke up dead in the middle of the night and remembered that I let my son carry the cart. Like I let him pull the cart that we were taking down the little gravel paths. And I woke up thinking, did I make him sanitize his hands? Is he clean? And I thought, geez, really weird. I would never, ever, ever have thought or had a worry attack over something like that today. It's amazing to me how one event has impacted us in such a psychological manner.
Right.
Well, Chad, I mean, you said you started back work on Monday. When you kind of look at your day, the last day or two, can you tell when you go in a dental office as a dentist now, like, are you doing everything you can? It's challenging to have that mask on exactly where you're supposed to have it on and take it off exactly how you're supposed to take it off. And
I'm normally realistic enough to tell people like that no one is in full compliance at all times. And it just isn't. If you think that you're in full compliance at all times, I think you're kidding yourself, because it's just like, I think you're just being naive to have, but like, if there might be a few people that actually really pull it off, but the fact is, it's just like, well, let me watch you for a little while. Cause I even actually remember I went in, and this is an Iowa code thing, but I went in to get an exam done for a cleaning, went in and did my exam. And then I went to the next room. Well, I left my mask on because we have to leave our mask on. If you're in the office, your mask has to be on, which is crazy because it renders your break room or your kitchen obsolete. I mean, you cannot eat lunch anymore in your office because you can't have your mask down. Hence, I'm shooting this at home. But so we have to, and to be able to reuse while the supplies are down, to be able to reuse our KN95s that have to be fit tested. I mean, just the rules keep on going, right? So you can wear an over mask, so that way you change the over mask. Well, I went to the next exam and washed up and got going. I thought, oh shoot, I have to remember I'm supposed to switch the over mask. And so it's just kind of funny because we have to burn through over masks so as to save the respirator. And that was one example where I was like, shoot, I didn't touch the mask. So for all due purposes, it didn't change anything. But as far as the Iowa board's concerned, they want us changing the mask, between every patient, when, typically I might even just have pulled it up and then put it back on and stuff like that when I'm saying hi and we want to show our faces to people. I'm apologizing because I can't show my face to them because we have to be wearing the mask even when we're discussing stuff. It's just really weird.
It seems like kind of rude, where I usually come in, shake someone's hand, and I say hello, the bedside manner. We try to kick that up a notch at the dental office, right? We're not only just dentists, we're also they're kind of their friends at some point. But to be able to talk to them with a mask on, and you have to talk a little bit louder, of course, right? Because it blocks the noise a little bit. It is definitely challenging. That's why I think screening the patient, being ready, as you said, is really important, like with your masks and your filters and your Isolite and your UVC and all this other stuff. But if you can screen the patient as best as you can, to as many patients as you can, with the thermometer under 100.4, with a pulse ox, actually. There are some patients that when you do their pulse ox, if they don't even know that they're under 92 pulse ox. And under 92 is another indicator that they've seen in a study in New York, that patients are coming in with respiratory distress or they have respiratory distress for a few days and they don't even know it yet because they just think they're shortness of breath or they're out of shape. And that's another screening tool that you can do is put a pulse ox on them. If it's below 92, defer treatment and send them out to get tested to see why they're below 92. That's kind of low.
Which interestingly might not just solve a COVID problem. It might solve a sleep apnea problem. It might solve a central sleep apnea problem,
Most
not
definitely.
just obstructive, you know? Yeah.
So it's not just blood pressure that we used to do before. Now it's, you know, the temperature and then the pulse ox. And then also, if you are able to do the COVID antibody screening tests to check for IgM and IgG. IgM is an antibody that typically is produced between day 3 and day 7 of the infectious cycle. So if a finger prick test after 10 minutes shows an IgM positive, and it's at about a 93, 94% accuracy, it's not 100% with these kits by any means, whether you go to an MD or at a dental office. It's strictly for screening, to just the same way when you check a temperature, you're not going to say, oh, you have COVID because you have 101 or you have the flu. They're going to go to their MD and get tested. The same thing here. If you see somebody who has an IgM antibody present, you want to defer treatment, and then you're basically minimizing the risk of that aerosol, whether your mask was on right or not, or here, you know, your filtrations are good or not. So the more we reduce risk by screening the most that we can through temperature, pulse ox, antibody screening. In San Francisco, by the way, the Dental Society just put out Sunday night that you are required to do rapid testing before you do any aerosol procedure. That was a shocker. That's on the city of the county of San Francisco's website, and then the San Francisco Dental Society has the link to that. So now a dentist can't even touch the patient for any aerosol procedure unless they do a rapid screen test. I don't care if you've got the fitted N95 or KN95 or the filters or the ozone water. That is the first line of defense to make sure with the temperature and that to be able to work on the patient.
Well, more power to them. I mean, the tough thing is we've got a lot of regulation that we're bickering about because it's just extra stuff to do. I think we know that we need to step up our game. I've complained before that I'm just like, you know, the way that we're doing it, I don't know if we're over the next 50 years, if we're going to have to improve our protocols, at least for, I'm hoping Mother Nature doesn't find a way to say, I'll prove you wrong.
Right.
But you get what I'm saying. The intent of it is just like, man, I just don't see how it can get much more than just wearing a full radon suit, you know, like a just over your whole body and stuff like that. But who knows, it might get to that point. I really don't know.
Chad, you bring up a really good point, because you can't hide from everything. We can't live in a bubble. We'll never be able to live in a bubble. And so I can understand this is an immediate response to what's happening right now. But I look on, I mean, I hang out in the different, you know, dental message forums and just watch what doctors were saying. And I feel like it is a bit of disorganized chaos at times, because do you listen to the ADA? Do you listen to the CDC? Do you listen to OSHA? Do you listen to your state? Like, I'm just watching this swirl around. What do you do? Well, what do you do? And it's just,
well, then it becomes the path of least resistance. Like who's making someone do 2 screenings in the last day? Well, we should make it 3 screenings, you know, like they should have, three SpO2 measurements and well, shoot, if they're doing 3, let's do 4. And if they're doing 6 feet, let's keep people 10 feet away. And, you know, it's just a race to the bottom.
Yeah, I think that where before it was flattening the curve, now we're looking for a cure. So it's definitely getting add-on to add-on, especially here in California. But you know, the goal here is we're doing more as dentists. Everyone feels that, right? So whether it's you're hot and sweaty underneath your mask and your gown, whether it's you're screening and patients are having to get temperature checks, or you're slowing your appointments down, or excuse me, your number of appointments, you're definitely lowering your, you know, I've definitely given more priority to high production patients and cases.
Right.
You just got to do that. If you're going to see 15 patients as opposed to 25, let's make sure that, with all due respect, we are a business, right? And we want to survive. Maybe the PPOs that, you know, the people have been missing out on their appointments for the last couple months. Little high production treatment pending patients first, and I put an hour for my deliveries, which I get done in 20 minutes usually.
Yes.
Just to kind of like, I leave the room. We leave it for about 10, 15 minutes for that HEPA air filter to cycle the room and clean it before we go back into the room to clean. All that to me also means a decrease in dollar value, right? And that's why it's really crucial to try to get a medical billing company like MCS, for example, that I use, Medical Concierge Services. They will bill that office visit for you, that you're doing all this screening and you're jumping. Oh, by the way, the PPE code for dental, I've discovered is D1999. So D1999, and you have to write a narrative when you bill it to dental PPO insurance. You can actually charge a cash fee for it under HMO dental because it's not a covered benefit. You need to write a narrative: PPE, gown, N95 mask or KN95 used, all the different barriers, the HEPA filters, whatever you use to be able to protect your office and the patient, that needs to be written as a narrative before that dental claim is sent out. You can't just send that D1999 out.
Well, and to be fair, I think it depends from state to state and from insurance to insurance, because I've seen specific Delta letters saying that the D1999 code is not acceptable for them. And yet at the same time, different state and or different insurance company, and they might say, okay, cool.
Yeah, I've heard doctors from my webinars that I've been doing getting paid as little as $10 for D1999. Delta of Minnesota, I think, was one that was. I mean,
Colorado's $8.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean, it's worth trying until we get a system down. After a month or so, you'll know, like, okay, it's pointless to do it for Delta Premier of California or whatever it is, and then at least you can make a decision. People always ask me, are you going to charge a PPE fee for every patient that walks in? I mean, that's your choice as a practitioner.
Sure.
Do you want to charge a $10 flat fee, like a $10 copay, after they read your letter and see that, you are doing above and beyond more than anybody else is doing, or at least meeting the requirements. So it may be a good idea to charge if that's if your bottom dollar is really being affected.
Regan, I like that, that he puts that into his COVID consent, basically a PR move during the time that they're going through that, to be able to say, here's the value that you're getting. So I think, Regan, that's what you were getting at, is how do you, how is he specifically marketing? And I don't know if that was comprehensively all that he's doing to market it, because it's also about perception, not just reality. But that was a really good little take home point.
Yeah. And also the county letter, that the certification, putting that on the door,
that too
has been huge. I mean, I was kind of a risk. I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, should I do this? Because I don't even know if the requirement is more than what's on the website of the California Department of Public Health. It's just PPEs and social distancing signs and making sure, like, you have a clean pen and a dirty pen section. Right. Hand sanitizers everywhere. So it's like, but he came in, he's like, oh yeah, you're 100%. Like, there's nothing you've done above and beyond. So that's great that we put that up there. And if it's not, maybe we really do want to know, whether we, it's a good idea, forget PR for a second, to just be ourselves know that the county is saying thumbs up. You've done what we actually deem required.
What I did was this last week, or no, I'm sorry, not this last week. Today I went in, and 3 patients actually mentioned it, but I shook their hands, and they were like, this is the first hand that I've shaken in the last 2 months. And I said, here's the good news. I just washed my hands, and then I come in here and shake your hand, and then I wash my hands again. So it's the safest handshake that you can have. But I feel so good about, like, looking you in the eye and actually shaking your hand for once. It makes me feel like I'm letting you feel like a human and me feel like a human. As an extrovert, like, I'm like, I really don't appreciate doing your class 2 composite as much as I do to actually shake your hand. And it's so cool just to, and have them acknowledge it too, because I thought maybe some people, and it's probably true. I mean, I'm day 3 in, that some people are going to be like, I don't want to shake your hand. Listen, I'm not going to make you shake my hand. I'm not being obstinate. I'm just saying, I want to shake your hand. And the fact is, it's clean. What were you saying, Regan?
They said, shake my hand.
Shake my hand. You must.
Well, Chad, a friend. No, I saw a friend, which is like, it feels like it's like an illegal thing to even see a friend right now. So it feels like a very bad thing to do. And she ran up and gave me a hug. And I was like, is that okay? Can we do that? Is that all right?
Yes.
It's just the world we live in now. So, and we're fine. It was
Well,
fine.
I even was walking, like I dropped my truck off to get the oil changed. And then my office is about a 3 or 4 block walk. And so I walked down, the street, and there was a guy that was coming the other way, my direction. And about 30 feet out, he pulled up his mask and then walked over in the grass, as we were crossing paths on the sidewalk. And okay, grant me this. This is Iowa. Okay. So this is just weird in normal, like California or Washington, but in Iowa, this isn't weird. Okay. And I said, hello. And I don't know who he was, but I just, I said, hi. And normally in Iowa, you're going to get a brief glance in the eye and hello or hi or, morning, whatever. And he just looked down and like kind of raised a couple fingers, kind of like hi or peace or whatever, but like couldn't even look me in the eye. And it goes to show you psychosocially, like the damage that this is having on a lot of people. Most people are going to be resilient enough that a year from now we're going to get over it, right? But there's some people, this is really, it's dragging me down a smidge. And if that's me, then it's going to drag some people down a spiral. And the fact, like, it's like, dude, you're not going to catch it by saying hello to me with your mask on, so like, so chill out. And like, just like, but we as a society, it's almost like this taboo thing where it's like, you must not look me in the eye or I'm going to get COVID. It's like, okay, it's again, that race, the spiral downward, the race to the bottom, where I'm just like, can you not look each other in the eye and say hello? I mean, your mask is on. I wasn't wearing a mask, sorry. But like, we were like, you get where I'm saying, Dar, like,
yeah,
let's be human to one another.
Yeah, in California, that's our normal day-to-day where people don't say hi to us.
No, and I would totally get that.
Actually, what's really, that's why it's funny you mentioned that right when you said that. You're like, in Iowa, it's a little different. But in California, I've actually noticed more people are saying hi. It's, and kind of waving.
Trying to be
us,
neighborly.
It's like people are missing social interaction.
Yes.
We're so big on it, especially in Southern California. But what I've noticed is the handshaking does offend some people when you go into an operatory and they don't want to, and they're worried that they're going to offend you if they say no. That's what
it is. Both people are looking, and one person will give a fist, and then the other person will kind of like you go and hold on to the fist, or do you give a you know what? If someone really didn't feel comfortable right now giving a handshake, I would just blow it off and be like, dude, I totally get it. But for the people that have shaken my hand, I'm just like, it's so, I don't know if this is overusing the word, okay, but it's comforting. Like, it's kind of nice to just be like, there we go.
What I like to do is, especially if they're wearing a bib, I like to definitely touch them on the shoulder, kind of like where that bib is, just to give them a little bit of like a pat, like a,
yes,
nice to see you, or whatnot, and so they feel like there is some sort of like, I'm just not, cold-blooded dentist that's working on them today, and get in and out before you hurt me type of mentality, or I hurt you.
Well, because we're not strictly surgeons. We're people,
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen what Dar's experienced up in Washington. So I've actually seen an increase in saying hello, like going out on walks and just, being around in our neighborhood. I've seen an increase in that. That's fantastic. But then there's the other end of the spectrum, like my 5-year-old son, who will just scream coronavirus and run away.
That's funny. So. The other thing I wanted to go over with you guys here is with respect to the communication with our staff. I think a lot of doctors haven't they'll text the staff like, hey, we're going back to work. It's like, when? Like, how? Like, what day? Like, how fast? How many days do we need to be open? Like, let's have proper communication, like even through an office meeting like I did last week, where you pay for your staff to come in and kind of do a walkthrough in your office, what the experience is when a patient walks in and sees the sign and uses the hands, and like, what if I have the mask down towards my chin as I'm walking in as a patient? Like, please feel comfortable. Could you please bring your mask up? It's for your own safety. We use aerosols in this office. Masks don't even work. Go through these kind of trials with your staff, pretending to be a patient and whatnot, and so that they feel more comfortable addressing the new, really, office policies that are being put forth on them. So day one, even if it's a soft opening, they're a little bit more comfortable.
This is going to sound ridiculous, well, to some, But we spent 3 hours going through the state board's regulations on PPE. 3 hours. That was just on that. So we spent a full day on orientation, and I think maybe another half day the next day talking about how we were going to schedule people. If anyone also wants that, I've got a patient experience checklist that we modified, and everyone could modify it themselves however they wanted. In fact, I'll tell you what, why don't I keep it simple? Because I was going to say, just email me at chad@productivedentist.com. But Regan, why don't I send this to our producer, Kashmir, to have her post it below where people could just see what I've done as far as, like who's doing what. And it's not right or wrong. It's basically every office is going to do it differently, right? Sometimes an office or a state or a county wants to do like a car check-in, and do you have an iPad or not? So if we say take the iPad to the car and you go, well, I can't use this, I don't have an iPod, well, change it to what you're doing, a sheet of paper, but like at least we all don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I think that's why that meeting with your staff is really crucial. And some people are like, oh, we're going to extend our hours. Well, is your staff able to come in on Fridays till 4 p.m.?
Right.
Like have this conversation with them. It's hard to find sitters for ourselves, let alone for the staff for their own kids. So again, don't rush 5 days a week, 8 to 6 every day, and give priority to the high production patients. There's some patients that their cleanings were due this past end of April. They're coming back end of July. I just don't have enough time to do them right now because we're trying to make sure we do block out some time for emergencies. There are patients that are coming in, they're going, hey, by the way, this tooth has been hurting. I know I didn't want to call you the last couple months. I didn't know even if you were open or not. And you look at the schedule, you're like, well, I want to limit the number of appointments for this patient walking into my office, leaving home and putting themselves, quote unquote, at risk. Let me do it right now after their checkup and cleaning. They're already here. I've already screened them. What better time to do those 2 fillings or 1 crown? So therefore, make sure you do have in your treatment column at least an hour in the morning and at least an hour in the afternoon for the short term, totally wide open for any of these hygiene patients that want to start treatment.
Yeah. And, another recommendation while we're on that, for doctors that haven't started up yet is, throw your team a bone. If the hygienists are worried about some kind of measure, like I wish we could, let's just say, the state of Iowa, we've got to, to conserve the respirators, wear a mask over that. And some doctors might be like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't want to use another mask. Listen, if you have enough masks, just throw them a bone. Like, we're not talking about buying them all Rolls Royces to work in, right? Like there comes a point where it's ridiculous, but there's also something where it's just like, can you not make them feel a little bit more comfortable by, getting a mask? Can you not, help them feel a little bit more comfortable by, like if you have 10 teammates and 9 of them are saying, man, I've seen this guy that uses hypochlorous fogger, and I really wish that, that we could do that here. And then you find out that you could implement that for $500 or, some, or $1,000 or $300 or something like that. Like, you don't want to just nickel and dime to death. I get it. Like, we're all business owners, but there are some things where it just feels good to say, you know what, for you guys, sounds good. I mean, because wouldn't you want that for your spouse or for yourself as an employee or something? So every once in a while, like, listen, we've already got blown away financially, right? I mean, I hate to, whatever, but $500 or whatever isn't gonna make or break the failure of the last 2 months.
Let alone, Chad, brilliant what you just said, let alone if you do get a hygienist that says, I do have a fever, that text message that we are dreading, or that call in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And it's like, okay, well, go get tested. And you're waiting 3 or 4 days for that PCR test to come in through the MD. And if it is yes, then what do you do? Right?
Yes.
Like, wow. Like, okay, like we got to check symptoms. If the doctor gets it, you're shut down for 14 plus days. I mean, as you said, a $700, $500 thing for fogging your office every day, or making sure they have enough masks or goggles or the face shields that are comfortable to wear. I'm actually talking to a bunch of hygienists, and they're like, well, I work pretty fast, but now I have to hand scale only. I can't use the ultrasonic. It's taking longer. Okay. I said, well, can you see 8 patients a day? She's like, no, I can probably see 6 because I got to clean that room, let the air filtration work its thing too. So I'm like, okay, well, if you can only see 6 patients a day, you should talk to your doctor, your boss, and say, hey, look, I'm not seeing the typical 8. I'm seeing the 6. And that means you're going to be producing less. So you may have to get less because you're seeing less patients. I mean, we all are getting less, right? The dentist is seeing 16, 18, or 12 or whatever patients. The hygienist may need to see less patients. With all due respect, maybe the income has to be, or the salary has to be less for the hygienist just to be able to have the time to clean the room that you're stuck in all day thoroughly.
Yeah. And, like throwing your team a bone, it's, like in the state of Iowa, when necessary, an ultrasonic Cavitron can be used. But let's just say that then some doctors, I let my team use an Isodry, which is an isolite without the light on it. So Isodry. And so we use that, and I've explained to them and shown them, that is, pretty consensus that that's helping reduce a majority of the load. 95% of the load is removed from that. So when we have our team use that, someone else could say, well, man, that's like, $4 or $5 per person extra. And it's just like, yeah, but then they're done on time and they're also feeling safe. So was that $4 or $5 for that mouthpiece worth it? And to me, it is. I can understand how someone else would say it's not, but it's like, man, if they can get done in a more efficient time, you're giving the patient a better outcome, and the state allows it. Because right now there's not a national consensus, right? I mean, it might as well be Greece when it comes to Iowa, or Minnesota might as well be Canada when it's versus Florida. So every state is just throwing their own statewide recommendations, or there might even be countywide or citywide, and that makes it really tough to have a consensus when we're talking about this and people are hearing this internationally or nationally, for dentists. But basically what I'm saying is you have to rethink. For example, I sodium bicarbonate buffer my anesthetic, and some people might be like, man, well that just costs too much or takes too much time. And I'm just like, well, now I'm done with the procedure quicker. And especially, for example, if you're in Texas and you can't get up from the chair for that one patient, why sit there for 5, or some people wait 10 minutes for a block to work when you can do it with, buffered anesthetic and be ready to drill in 1 minute? Those extra 9 minutes are now all the more important.
Yeah, you mentioned Isodry or Isolite. Isodry is like $900, I think, for the system. It's not that crazy.
Especially if you get a Kona adapter for 125 or something.
Yeah, there you go. There's a new study that will come out. I've heard from the grapevine that's going to come out next week, that has shown the aerosol production to be almost, or the aerosol that's being released into the room, almost down to 0 with an Isodry Isolite system and another suction in there, for example, like a high vac. So
any kind of at source suction. Yeah, it's really cool. I saw a Facebook video that I posted, Reagan, on that PDA tribe, where that video was showing that it was 5 micrograms per meter, which is super low. And that's without even an at source suction, which he was saying would bring it down from 5 to 4 or 5 to 3, which at that point is negligible. But 50 micrograms per meter was the danger zone for the EPA. And that's without people having PPE on. That's a funny word, PPE on, PP.
PPP and PPE, right?
Oh, don't you? Yeah. Oh, gee. Hey, let me ask this much. It might be out of left field, but do you have any favorite books that you've been reading over the last year or last couple months or anything like that? It could be totally non-dentally related too. I'm just asking.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's a neuroscientist, supernatural, basically human. His book, Superhuman, is something that I've actually really gotten into, because it seems to me this whole world of positive thinking and meditation sounds really foo-foo-y for some scientists like us. But for some, it hits home. And what he does is Dr. Joe Dispenza, he actually has also a series on the Gaia channel called Rewired. He looks at brain scans and cortisol blood work for people who are in stress, and then they do certain meditations to reduce their stress. and certain meditations, after they take blood work, they see cortisol levels down. I mean, I love scientific approach towards a spiritual ideology.
Sure.
And they do brain scans to see how certain serotonin levels go up when you have gratitude. You have a stressful situation in between patients, and you sit down and you go, well, at least I have my office, I have my health, I have my family. I was able to drive here. My hands are working, my back's still okay. That sense of gratitude lowers your stress levels. And that's something that I've been really getting into by reading his.
I think that's really cool. Think about this. For centuries, faithful people have said there's something beyond what we can see. Okay. And by and large, science, especially in the last century, has said, well, that's ridiculous. There's no way that I can be, that there can be something beyond the veil that I can't see right now. Then, so then all of a sudden the physicists go, oh, string theory. There's this, there's this, what do you call it? Like a dimension beyond what we can see. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, I mean, science says it, so it must be true. But the whole while, for hundreds of years, people were like, oh, that's baloney. And if we can't see it, then science says that it doesn't exist, until science says it exists. And then all of a sudden it's okay. So that's just one example where, and you brought up a great example where, it sounds like it's like, oh, that's just foo-foo. And it's like, okay, I get that, because I'm pretty just Midwest normal, yeah, that sounds foo-foo. But it's like, well, listen, is there something more than to what we can measure at the way that we, as 21st century scientists understand it? Yes, there's more to meet the eye than what we can see.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just subjective, it's objective and subjective. And that builds, for us as dentists that we work in 1 millimeter increments, some sort of a proof that, hey, look, you know what, to lower and not be the third highest risk of suicide and all these other fun things that we get going on. I'm like, really? I haven't thought about that at all. To think positive, and it's hard, but to have actually, it's so simple to sit down and have gratitude for certain basic things that you have in your life. And that in turn changing biologically your hormones and your neural peptides that makes sense to me, at least. So yes. I'll do it more.
Right.
Dar, have you ever heard of the HemiSync hypnosis meditations?
Yes, I have.
So I just started not that long ago, but I've been doing the early morning, anxiety release. And I tell you, I do that, and then I work out, and then I go to work. It has been completely life-changing for me, completely. So it has been helping me incredibly. And when I meditate, it almost like when you close your eyes, you almost see like bands of light. So if you look at the scans, they'll show you the random brain behaviors. And then when you go into this HemiSync or other meditative principles, how it aligns your brainwaves to be talking back and forth between the hemispheres in sort of a more orderly way.
And sometimes that's what I try to do. Like today, when I had a 88-year-old patient in the chair and another 70-something-year-old in the chair next to that person, and I'm in between patients, and I'm coming and I'm sitting down, I'm just like, okay, this is great that I'm actually helping somebody. I'm back to work. Like the sweat's kind of coming down my temporal area. The mask is on my face, and I'm like, calm down, Dar. You're so blessed. And all of a sudden, I don't know what it is, like that 5, 10, 50% energy just spiked, and I just went into the room and did a song and dance before I did my dentistry, like we always try to do for the patient to feel more safe. And that's it. It went away, as opposed to that, my God, what is this happening? Why am I here? This is so hard today compared to what it was 2 months ago. Like we already have a hard profession. Get off that. You took an oath to help treat patients. Do it safely, do it with intelligence, and lead with your heart, not with
happily.
Fear. And happily. And that mood itself lowers your stress, increases your immune system, which is the golden ticket today, and push forward.
Right.
Wow. So we've got one last question for you, Dar. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So serious question, gut reaction, bacon or eggs?
Oh, eggs all the way.
All right.
We got an egg.
We've got an egg.
I'm on the East Coast. Bacon's, a little bit more fattening, 22% chance of colon cancer. I don't know. I've heard it all for the health LA health method, so to speak, or angle.
With avocado, right? You know,
Yeah, for sure, avocado.
And a shot of
The good
wheatgrass.
fats. The good fats.
So if people want to, check you out, 805 Dentistry on Instagram. And of course, as you mentioned, Dar Radfar at gmail.com.
Correct. Yeah. If anyone needs any of the copy of the webinars, I'll be glad to send you the sleep apnea medical billing one or the reopening COVID one, which I've been blessed. It's been a real big hit. Afterwards, I can send you guys the informed consent that I use that you can kind of modify for your own office, that sets what your office does to keep up with the requirements above and beyond what some of you may be doing, and any other things like social distancing signs and all those details, COVID antibody screening tests. I go over all that in the webinar, and you're more than welcome to get that information on the house, of course.
Very cool.
Wow. Thank you, Dar.
Thank you, guys.
Well, you have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast number 80 something on Everyday Practices. We'll see y'all next week.
Bring your lunch or take us to the gym again next week to improve your everyday practices. Also, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list. Now get out there and win with Everyday Practices.